The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days in London. It poured over the dark streets like the city itself was trying to wash something away. Something dirty, something dangerous. Neon lights flickered in puddles, sirens echoed in the distance, and inside a black armored car parked outside an abandoned warehouse, a man sat waiting. Everyone in London's underground world knew him, feared him, never named him out loud. But tonight, he wasn't the most powerful man in the room. Tonight he was just a father. Still no sign, he asked, his voice low, controlled, but barely. The man beside him shook his head. Nothing, sir. We've checked every location. Every contact. It's like he vanished. The Mafia boss closed his eyes for a second. His son had been missing for 72 hours. No ransom. No message. No body. And that terrified him more than anything. Because in his world, silence meant something worse than death. Across the street, unnoticed by everyone, a little girl stood under a broken streetlight. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her coat was too thin for the cold. Her shoes were worn out. And beside her sat a scruffy dog, a mixed breed with muddy fur and sharp, intelligent eyes. They didn't belong here. This wasn't a place for children. This was where men disappeared. Yet the girl stood there watching the black car. Waiting. Inside the warehouse, tension exploded. I don't care what it takes. The Mafia boss slammed his fist on the table. You find my son. Sir, one of his men hesitated. We've already contacted. I said find him. His voice echoed through the empty space. No one dared speak. As everyone knew, when powerful men lose control, people die. Outside, the little girl finally moved. Come on, Bruno, she whispered. The dog stood up instantly. They crossed the street, step by step. Closer to danger. Closer to men who wouldn't think twice before pulling a trigger. The guards noticed her immediately. Hey, stop right there. The girl froze. Bruno growled softly. Please, she said, her voice small but steady. I need to talk to the man inside the car. The guards exchanged looks. Then laughed. Do you even know who's in there, kid? She nodded. Yes. And you're still here? Another guard smirked. Lost your way home? The girl shook her head. No. I came because of his son. That made them pause. Just for a second. Enough for tension to shift. What did you say? One of them asked, now serious. The girl looked straight at the black car. And said the words that would change everything. My dog knows where your son is. Inside the car, the Mafia boss heard it. Impossible. His head turned slowly toward the window. Bring her here. The door opened. The rain hit harder. And within seconds, the little girl was standing face to face with one of the most feared men in the country. But she didn't look scared. Not even a little. The Mafia boss studied her. A child. Dirty. Alone. This had to be a joke. Or worse, a setup. You have 10 seconds, he said calmly. Then you leave. The girl nodded. Your son isn't dead. Silence. Every man around them stiffened. The boss's eyes darkened. Careful, he said quietly. But the girl didn't stop. He's alive. He's just somewhere he can't get out. The boss leaned forward slightly. Who told you that? She pointed down. At Bruno. The dog stepped forward. Calm, focused, watching, not afraid. One of the guards laughed nervously. You expect us to believe a dog. Enough. The boss raised his hand. Silence again. His eyes never left the girl. Explain. She swallowed, then said, Bruno used to belong to someone bad. Someone who hurt people. He ran away. But he remembers places, smells, secrets. The boss's jaw tightened. Go on. Last night, she continued, he started acting strange. He kept pulling me toward the river. Toward the old tunnels. The word tunnels changed everything. The boss stood up slowly. Because there was only one group in London that used those tunnels. And they weren't just criminals. They were ghosts. Why help me? He asked. The girl hesitated. For the first time, she looked unsure. Then she said quietly, because I know what it's like to lose someone. Something in her voice made the room go still. Painfully real. The boss looked at the dog again. Then back at the girl. Every instinct told him this was insane. A distraction. But another voice, the one he never listened to, whispered something else. What if she's telling the truth? Get the car ready, he ordered. One of his men stepped forward. Sir, this could be, I know what it could be. He looked at the girl. But if she's right, it's my only lead. The girl smiled slightly. Not relieved. Not excited. Just certain. As they moved toward the vehicles, one of the guards leaned down and whispered to another. If this is a trick, she's dead. But Bruno heard it. And growled. Warning. The Mafia boss opened the car door. Then paused. And turned back to the girl. If you're lying, she shook her head. I'm not. He studied her one last time. Then said, get in. As the car doors shut and engines roared to life. None of them realized one thing. The girl wasn't just leading them to the missing boy. She was leading them into something far more dangerous. Something hidden. Something buried for years. And by the time they understood the truth, it would already be too late. The convoy moved fast through the wet streets of London. Black SUVs sliced through traffic, ignoring signals, forcing cars aside. Sirens weren't needed. Fear cleared the road faster than any alarm ever could. Inside the lead vehicle, silence hung heavy. The Mafia boss sat still, his gaze fixed ahead. Across from him, the little girl held Bruno close, her small hand resting on the dog's head as if grounding him, or herself. Where exactly are we going? One of the men finally asked. The girl didn't look up. East side, she said softly. Near the river. There's an old entrance, hidden behind broken iron gates. The boss's fingers tightened slightly. He knew that place. Everyone in his world did. But nobody went there anymore. Because the people who used those tunnels never left witnesses. Rain blurred the windows as they crossed into a darker part of the city, where streetlights flickered and buildings leaned like they were tired of standing. Stop here, the girl suddenly said. The convoy halted. Engines idled. Men stepped out, scanning the area, hands already near their weapons. The boss opened his door slowly. Cold air hit his face. Then he saw it. Rust-covered gates. Half buried in shadows. Chains broken long ago. And behind them, darkness. This place has been dead for years, one of his men muttered. The girl shook her head. No, she said quietly. It's not. Bruno stepped forward, pulling slightly on the leash. Eager. Focused. Like he knew exactly where to go. Stay close, the boss ordered. Flashlights flicked on. Guns came out. And together, they stepped into the darkness. The smell hit first. Damp stone. Rust. Something older. Something rotten. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, steady echoes. Each step felt louder than it should. Each shadow looked like it was moving. The tunnels twisted in unnatural ways, like a maze designed not to guide, but to trap. How does a dog remember all this? One man whispered. The girl answered without turning. He doesn't remember the tunnels. She paused. He remembers the fear. That shut everyone up. Minutes passed. Or maybe longer. Time didn't feel normal down here. Then suddenly, Bruno stopped. His body stiffened. A low growl vibrated from his chest. What is it? The boss asked. The girl knelt beside him. He smells them. Who? She looked up. The men who took your son. Before anyone could react, a noise echoed. Footsteps. Distant. Then gone. Lights off, the boss whispered instantly. Darkness swallowed them. Only the sound of breathing remained. And then a faint voice. Weak. Barely audible. Help, the boss froze. His heart slammed against his chest. He knew that voice. Dad? Everything exploded at once. Move, the boss shouted. Lights snapped back on. Men rushed forward. Bruno barked and sprinted ahead, pulling the girl with him. Through a narrow corridor. Down a broken stairwell. Into a large underground chamber, and there he was. The boy. Tied to a metal chair. Bruised. Weak. But alive. No, wait. The girl screamed. But it was too late. One of the men rushed forward, and the floor beneath him clicked. The explosion shook the entire tunnel. Dust filled the air. Rocks fell. Screams echoed. Trap! Someone yelled. Gunfire erupted from the shadows. Hidden shooters. Everywhere. Get down. The boss grabbed the girl and pulled her behind cover as bullets tore through the space. His men fired back blindly. Chaos. Pure chaos. Bruno barked wildly, circling, trying to locate the attackers. They knew we were coming, one man shouted. No, the boss said, his voice dark. They were waiting. Another explosion. Closer this time. The ceiling cracked. Debris crashed down. The tunnel was collapsing. We have to leave now, someone yelled. But the boss didn't move. His eyes were locked on his son. Still tied. Still trapped. I'm not leaving him, he said. The girl grabbed his arm. You don't understand, she shouted over the noise. This is exactly what they want. He turned to her sharply. What are you talking about? Her face was pale. Terrified. But certain. They didn't take your son for ransom, she said. They used him to bring you here. The words hit harder than any explosion. Another wave of gunfire forced them back. One of the boss's men fell. Another screamed. This isn't a rescue, the girl said. It's an execution. For a split second, the boss hesitated. And in that moment, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Clapping slowly. Well done, the man said calmly. You actually made it. Every gun turned toward him. But no one fired. Because they all recognized him. Impossible, one of the men whispered. The boss's face went cold. Colder than it had ever been. You, he said. The man smiled. Clean suit. Calm eyes. No fear. You look surprised, he said. You shouldn't be. He tilted his head slightly. After all, you taught me everything I know. The girl's grip tightened on Bruno. Because even she hadn't expected this. The boss took a step forward. Slow. Controlled. Deadly. I watched you die, he said. The man's smile widened. No, he replied softly. You watched what I wanted you to see. Silence. Even the gunfire had stopped. Why? The boss asked. The answer came without hesitation. Because you took everything from me, the man said. And tonight, he glanced at the tied boy. Then back at the boss. I returned the favor. The ground trembled again. The tunnel groaned. Time was running out. The girl whispered almost to herself, this isn't over. Because deep down, she was starting to realize something even worse. They hadn't just walked into a trap. They had walked into a story that had started long before her. Long before the boy. Long before tonight. And the truth behind it was far more dangerous than any of them imagined. The tunnel felt like it was breathing. Dust filled the air. Cracks spread across the ceiling like veins. Every second that passed made the ground less stable, and the situation more deadly. But no one moved. Because of him. The man standing in the shadows. Alive. Watching. Smiling. You should be dead, the Mafia boss said, his voice dangerously calm. The man tilted his head slightly. And yet, here I am. His eyes shifted toward the tied boy, then back again. You always underestimated me. The girl clutched Bruno tighter. Her heart was racing now, not just from fear but from something else. Something she couldn't explain. Because the moment she saw that man, Bruno had changed. The dog wasn't just alert anymore. He was tense, angry, afraid. Low growls rumbled from his chest. Not loud, but constant. Like a warning that refused to stop. The man noticed. Of course he did. His smile faded slightly as his eyes locked onto the dog. Well, he murmured. That's unexpected. The boss stepped forward again. Enough games, he said. You took my son. You set this trap. Now you're going to tell me why. The man chuckled softly. Still barking orders like you own the world. His gaze hardened. But you don't. Another crack split across the ceiling. Small rocks fell between them. Time was slipping. Fast. You built an empire on fear, the man continued. You destroyed anyone who stood in your way. He paused. And when I stood in your way, the silence stretched. Heavy. Personal. You erased me. The boss's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes did. Recognition. You were weak, the boss said coldly. The words hit harder than a bullet. But the man didn't flinch. He smiled again. No, he said quietly. I was loyal. The air shifted. Even the men behind the boss felt it. Because loyalty, in their world, was everything. You sent me to die, the man continued. And when I survived, You made sure no one knew. He spread his arms slightly. So I became a ghost. The girl swallowed. This wasn't just revenge. This was something deeper. Something broken. Bruno suddenly barked. Loud. Everyone flinched. Bruno, the girl whispered, trying to calm him. But the dog stepped forward. Between her and the man. Proactive. The man's eyes narrowed. Then slowly, recognition dawned. No, he said under his breath. The girl looked confused. What is it? She asked softly. The man took a step closer. Careful. Almost curious. That dog, he said quietly. Where did you get him? The girl hesitated. He found me, she replied. A few months ago. He was hurt. Scared. She paused. But he never left after that. The man let out a slow breath. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed. Not loudly. Not crazily. But in a way that made everyone uneasy. Of course, he said. Of all the places you could have ended up. He shook his head. You found her. The boss's patience snapped. What are you talking about? He demanded. The man looked at him. And for the first time, there was no smile. That dog, he said slowly, was mine. Silence. Heavy. Unbelievable. The girl's grip on Bruno tightened. No, she whispered. That's not true. Bruno growled again. But this time, there was something else in it. Conflict. He was trained, the man continued. Not just to track, but to remember. His eyes locked onto the boss. I used him for jobs. For finding people. For things you didn't want to get your own hands dirty with. The realization hit like lightning. That's how she knew, one of the men whispered. The girl shook her head. No. Bruno would never. He doesn't have a choice, the man cut in. That's when it happened. A sharp whistle echoed through the tunnel. Bruno froze. Completely still. The girl's eyes widened. Bruno? Another whistle. Different tone. The dog's body trembled. His breathing changed. Slowly, he turned. Away from the girl. No, she whispered. Toward the man. Good boy, the man said softly. The boss raised his gun instantly. Stop this. But it was too late. Bruno stepped forward. One step at a time. Like he was being pulled by something stronger than loyalty. Stronger than love. The girl dropped to her knees. Bruno, please, she cried. Don't leave me. For a moment. Just one moment. The dog hesitated. His ears twitched. His body shook. Then, another whistle. Sharper. Commanding. And Bruno obeyed. He walked past her. The girl felt something inside her break. Tears filled her eyes. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silent devastation. Because in that moment, he realized the truth. Bruno hadn't chosen her. He had been leading her. All along. This was never about finding the boy, the man said calmly. The boss's grip tightened on his weapon. Then what was it about? The man smiled again. But this time, it wasn't just revenge. It was something far worse. It was about bringing her to me. The words hit like a shockwave. The boss turned sharply toward the girl. Why her? He demanded. The man's eyes softened slightly as he looked at her. Because, he said quietly, she's the only one who can finish what I started. The ground shook violently. The tunnel began to collapse faster now. Screams echoed. Rocks crashed down. Time was up. But no one moved. Because one question now mattered more than survival. The girl looked up, tears still in her eyes. What do you mean? She whispered. The man stepped closer. Close enough for her to see his face clearly now. And when she did, her entire world shifted. But something about him felt familiar. Too familiar. You don't remember me, he said softly. She shook her head. He knelt slightly, lowering himself to her level. But you will. Another explosion tore through the tunnel. The ceiling started coming down. Time to go, someone screamed. The boss grabbed his gun tighter. Torn between his son, the girl, and the truth unraveling in front of him. Because whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The tunnel was collapsing. Stone cracked. Dust choked the air. Pieces of the ceiling crashed down around them like the earth itself was trying to bury every secret hidden below London. Move, one of the men shouted. Thistle. No one moved. Because the truth had just begun to surface. The man stood in front of the little girl, his eyes locked onto hers. Calm. Certain. Like he had been waiting for this moment for years. You don't remember me, he said softly. The girl shook her head again, fear trembling through her voice. No. I don't. Another violent shake ripped through the tunnel. A massive chunk of stone slammed down behind them, blocking part of the path they came from. Time was almost gone. Sir, we have to leave, one of the boss's men yelled. We don't have time for this. But the Mafia boss didn't move. Because for the first time since this began, he wasn't thinking like a criminal. He was thinking like a father. Talk, he ordered the man coldly. Yao. The man glanced at him, then back at the girl. And something changed in his expression. Not anger. Not revenge. Something deeper. 7 years ago, he began, his voice steady despite the chaos around them, there was a fire. The girl's breathing slowed. Unconsciously. Like her body recognized something her mind didn't. A house burned down near the river, he continued. Everyone said it was an accident. He paused. It wasn't. The boss's eyes narrowed. That night, the man said, I was sent to eliminate someone. Silence. Heavy. A woman, and her child. The girl froze. But when I got there, he continued, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. Another crack tore through the ceiling. Dust rained down over them. Still, no one interrupted. The woman wasn't begging, he said quietly. She wasn't scared. He looked at the girl. She was protecting you. The girl's heart pounded. Loud. Painful. I was ordered to finish the job, the man said. His jaw tightened. But I didn't. The boss stepped forward slowly. Why? He asked. The man didn't look at him. Because she told me something, he said. The girl's voice barely came out. What did she say? The man's eyes softened. Just slightly. He said, my daughter isn't like the others. The air felt different now. Even the chaos seemed quieter. She said you were special, he continued. That one day, people would come looking for you. The girl's hands trembled. I didn't believe her, he admitted. But then, I saw your eyes. He leaned closer. And I knew she wasn't lying. The boss's patience snapped again. What does this have to do with now? He demanded. The man stood up straight. Finally, because the people who wanted her dead, he paused. They're back. A deep rumble shook the tunnel. Louder. And this time, he said, they're not sending someone like me. The girl whispered, then why bring me here? The man looked directly at her. Because they're already watching you. Silence. Terrifying. They saw you help him, he said, nodding toward the boss. They saw the dog. They saw everything. The boss's expression darkened. You're lying. Am I? The man replied calmly. Before anyone could respond, a sharp red laser duty appeared on the wall beside them. Then another. And another. Snipers. Down, someone screamed. Gunshots exploded through the tunnel. Precise. Deadly. Not wild like before. This was different. Professional. One of the boss's men dropped instantly. Another fell before he could even react. They're here, the man shouted. The boss grabbed the girl and pulled her behind a fallen slab of concrete. Stay down. The girl's heart raced. Her breathing uneven. This wasn't your trap, the boss said, realization hitting him. The man shook his head. No, he said. This is theirs. Another sniper shot echoed. Closer this time. We have to move, one of the remaining men yelled. The tunnel's going to collapse and we're sitting targets. The boss looked at his son, still tied. Still helpless. I'm getting him, he said. You'll die if you try, the man warned. I'll die anyway if I don't. For a split second, their eyes met. Enemies. But not in this moment. Cover me, the boss said. The man hesitated. Just for a breath. Then he nodded. Gunfire erupted again as the boss ran forward. Bullets slammed into the walls around him. Dust exploded with every impact. The girl watched, frozen, terrified. Bruno stood beside her now. Conflicted. Whining softly. Bruno, she whispered. The dog looked at her. Then at the man. Then back again. Another whistle started to form, but before the man could finish it, the girl shouted, "Stop." For the first time, he hesitated. "You said you saved me," she said, tears in her eyes. "Then stop treating him like a weapon." The words hit hard. Bruno stepped back, away from the man. Slowly, he returned to the girl's side. The man lowered his hand, silent. And in that moment, something changed. Meanwhile, the boss reached his son, cut the ropes, pulled him up. "Dad," the boy whispered weakly. "I've got you," the boss said. But as he turned, a sniper laser locked onto his chest. "No," the girl gasped. Everything slowed. The trigger pulled, and just before the shot landed, Bruno leapt straight into the line of fire. The gunshot echoed, and the dog collapsed. "Bruno," the girl screamed. Time stopped. The boss stood frozen, his son in his arms, alive. But behind him, the girl fell to her knees beside the dog. "No, oh, no," she whispered, her hands shaking. Bruno's breathing was weak, fading. The man stared, something breaking inside him. As for the first time, the dog had disobeyed him. Not because of training, but because of her. The tunnel shook violently again. The final collapse had begun. "We have to go now," someone screamed. But the girl didn't move. "I'm not leaving him," she whispered. And in that moment, everyone realized something. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about choice. And whatever choice she made next would change everything. The tunnel was dying. That was the only way to describe it. The walls groaned. The ceiling split open. Entire sections of stone collapsed into clouds of dust and darkness. The air was thick, choking. Every breath felt stolen. But in the middle of all that chaos, a little girl knelt on the cold ground, holding her dog. "Bruno, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. Her hands pressed against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. But there was too much. Far too much. Bruno's breathing was shallow now, each breath weaker than the last. But his eyes, they were still on her. You're okay," she said, even though she knew it wasn't true. Tears rolled down her cheeks, mixing with dirt and dust. "I'm right here. I'm not leaving you." Behind her, "We have to go," one of the men shouted again. Another section of the tunnel collapsed, sealing off part of the chamber completely. Time had run out. The Mafia boss stood a few feet away, his injured son barely conscious in his arms. He looked at the girl, at the dog, and for the first time, he hesitated, because he knew that look. That helpless, breaking look. He had seen it before. In mirrors. "We can't stay," one of his men urged. "Sir, if we don't move now, we're all dead." The boss didn't respond, because this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something deeper. The man, the one who had started all of this, stepped forward slowly. His expression had changed completely now. No arrogance. No control. Just conflict. He knelt beside the girl, carefully, like he was approaching something fragile. "He's gone," he said quietly. The girl shook her head instantly. No, he's not," but deep down, he knew. Bruno's body twitched slightly. One last breath. Then stillness. Everything went silent for her. No gunshots. No collapsing stone. No shouting. Nothing. A piece of her world disappeared in that moment. "I told you," she whispered, her voice barely there. "I told you he was good." The man closed his eyes briefly, like he was feeling something he hadn't felt in years. "He wasn't just trained," he said softly. "He chose you." That broke her. She leaned forward, holding Bruno tightly now, crying silently. Another violent crash shook the tunnel. Reality came rushing back. "We have to move," the boss said firmly now. The man looked at him, then back at the girl. "If we stay," he said quietly, "he dies for nothing." Those words hit differently. The girl slowly lifted her head, her face streaked with tears, eyes red, but something inside her had changed. She nodded. Once, Fifi. She laid Bruno down, her hand lingering on his fur for just a second longer. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she stood. And in that moment she didn't look like a lost child anymore. She looked stronger. The boss shifted his grip on his son. "Come," he said. They moved fast through the collapsing tunnel, dodging falling debris. Gunshots still echoing faintly behind them. The man led the way now. Through narrow passages. Hidden turns. Paths only someone who knew this place could navigate. Left, he shouted. They turned. Down, he yelled. They ducked as part of the ceiling collapsed above them. The girl kept moving. Even though every step felt heavier. Even though her chest felt empty. Minutes later, a faint light appeared ahead. Exit, someone shouted. Hope surged. They ran faster. Bursting out into the cold London night. Rain still pouring. Air fresh. Alive. One by one they stumbled out. Coughing. Breathing. Surviving. But not all of them made it. The tunnel behind them collapsed completely. Sealing everything inside forever. Silence fell again. But this time, it was different. The boss gently set his son down, checking him quickly. Alive. Barely. But alive. Then he turned. To the girl. You saved him, he said. She didn't respond. Because her eyes were fixed on something else. The man. He stood a few steps away. Watching her. You said they're coming for me, she said quietly. He nodded. Who am I?